right. Talk to me. The treasurer made some comments about how he can't support or won't support any more debt, any more borrowing. There's a plan that's making its way through to borrow 6.7.
It's a little over 6.
Do you think it's short-sighted to not include paying off the backlog of unpaid bills as something the state needs to get done?
Well, what bothers me about that statement is the fact that is he assuming that the unpaid bills that the state has is not debt. I mean, he's talking about not taking on additional debt, which I agree with that. But this is debt that the state already has. We owe actually I think we owe more than that. But I have a proposal out right now that would do bonding to raise $6.175 billion to pay this backlog of debt that the state has right now. So right now we're using school districts and universities and private companies and healthcare providers. We're using them as our credit card. They're carrying that debt for us. So what I think is, when he says we don't need to increase debt, I think most people would probably agree with that statement. But to say that this backlog of these unpaid bills that the state has should not be included in that statement, that seems to not make any sense whatsoever.
One of the points that was made was that families across Illinois owe $42,000 apiece if you break down the total debt load and all of that. And I asked, I said, there are companies out there that are waiting for money, that have submitted invoices that are waiting for way more than $42,000. How do you square a pledge to not borrow with the reality that you have schools that are owed $2-something billion, almost $3 billion, I want to say, and then hospitals, providers, and everybody on down the line?
Yeah. I mean, first of all, you have to break that $42,000 number down. Of course, the vast majority of that is the unfunded pension liability, and that's something that has been a growing problem for many, many years. It's not something that it was here when he was in the General Assembly. It was here when he got here in the General Assembly. So it has gotten worse. A lot of that is a result of the downturn in the economy, which wasn't reflected in the document that he put out today. I mean, some of these things were simply out of our control. So I think the important thing to do is the overall statement that we need to limit our debt and address the debt that we have. I agree with that, but part of that is making sure that we pay our bills to the public, to the people that we have asked. And what's frustrating about this is that we have asked the school districts, we have asked our universities, we have asked private companies out there provide this service for the state of Illinois. They've provided it, and then in return we've said, well, we're not going to pay you for a while until we get the money, and that could be 60, 90, 120, in some cases months long, and in some cases a year. So it just and there's been so many multiple or domino effect of that when people have been reluctant to bid on contracts, so the competitiveness of those bids have been affected by that, or somebody bids on it with the assumption that they're not going to get their money for a long time, so they pad that bid to accommodate that. We need to take care of this backlog of these unpaid bills, and that's why I was disappointed when the treasurer came out and said he wasn't going to support a proposal to do any to address that debt.
This notion of perhaps alerting rating companies, alerting bonding houses, and with the hopes of driving up the interest rate to make it more expensive for the state to borrow. He doesn't have a vote. Democrats could push this through. In the end, all that does is make it more expensive. Is it worth the extra cost to make the political point?
Well, in the document that he provided, he talks about the fact that it costs more money to borrow more. Costs the state more money to borrow because of the financial situation that we are in, and that's true. But to make the statement that he is going to call the bonding companies and and discourage them from doing business with the state of Illinois to drive up the cost of borrowing just seems very counterproductive. I mean, it works against actually what he's saying. He's realizing he's making the point that it costs more to do business, and yet on the same hand he's taking steps, or he says he's going to take steps. I hope he doesn't do it, but he says he's going to take steps to actually drive up that interest cost even more. I mean, instead of trying to work with us, it's like he's working against us. And the other thing that's lacking from his whole proposal is solutions. It didn't provide any solutions whatsoever. So.
What has to, and this will be the last question, what has to happen to get your proposal through the Senate, through to the governor's office? What sort of conversations have you had with the governor, with members of the House? Do you expect that in the end it's going to be all Democratic votes, or do you think Republicans will come over?
Well, first of all, it can't be all Democratic votes because it takes a 3/5 vote to do the borrowing, which it should. I support that proposal. It's been in place for a long time. So it's going to take some Republican support both in the Senate and in the House to make it happen. And so what I've been doing is trying to answer the questions. So I came out and we, of course the governor initially came out with his borrowing of $8.75 billion, which I see very little support for that proposal. And so now I've got a counter proposal here to borrow $6 billion. I've worked with the comptroller, I worked with Judy Bartopinka to identify exactly what we owe. What is our unpaid bills, and even broke it down. Who do we owe them to? What do we owe to the K through 12 education? What do we owe to the universities? What do we owe for medical? What do we owe to the private companies and the vendors that do business with the state of Illinois? So some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle have said, we don't know what that number is. What is that number exactly? So the comptroller is very gracious, has worked with us, that she supports our proposal to get these bills paid. So worked with them to try to build support for my proposal, and to do a restructuring of this debt. So and I think I felt like I was to the point where let's put the bills out there. So there's 4 separate bills. Again, and that's to try to gain support. My colleagues on the other side of the aisle, maybe they don't support paying governmental entities. Maybe they don't support paying the group health insurance. So I've broken it down into 4 different bills. If I can't get the whole apple, I'll take a part of it. Maybe we can get some of these bills paid, and that helps with the whole cash flow problem as well.
Not designed to make them look bad if they vote against one proposal or the other.
By 4 separate, again, they've indicated that they simply don't support the total borrowing package. So my hope is that we can break it down into 4 different votes, and perhaps they would support a portion of that. Any pressure that we can take off of this backlog of unpaid bills, if we can address a portion of it, that's going to help the cash flow in the entirety as far as this backlog of unpaid bills. So I think it would be a step in the right direction.
Wonderful.